A congressman has asked the Trump administration to resume its funding of the controversial Syrian activist group, the White Helmets. Reports of Washington cutting money to the group emerged a week ago, though no confirmation has been issued so far. RT's Caleb Maupin dug deeper into the story for us.
Well, Ed Royce from the Foreign Affairs Committee of the U.S. Congress, he's met with the White Helmets on many occasions with other politicians. He's been photographed with them. He's a big supporter of the White Helmets, and now he's calling for their funding to be immediately restored.
We cannot abandon the region. We must work with our partners and use all the tools of diplomacy, including financial pressure and U.S. assistance, to help change conditions on the ground. The administration should start by immediately resuming stabilization funding, including to the White Helmets.
Now, already, the United States has provided the White Helmets with over $32 million from the USAID. Now, they also receive funding from various European governments, as well as governments throughout the Middle East. And when it was announced that their funding would be cut, there were offers from the United Kingdom to fill the gap, for the UK to provide funding of their own to actually fill up that gap and make up for the loss of funding from the United States. They've actually had a close tie with the United Kingdom for a long time. In fact, the White Helmets were organized by a former member of MI6. They have faced for a long time accusations of having ties with extremist groups, as well as the fact that they only operate in rebel-held territories. They deny the accusation that they cooperate with the extremist groups. Now, the White Helmets have always claimed that they're an impartial organization. We've actually heard some very strong criticism of them coming from Russia and Syria. And the governments of Russia and Syria have gone as far as to point out that it appears that a number of their videos have actually been staged in order to effectively serve kind of talking points against the Syrian government. Now, Ed Royce has come forward and called for their funding to be immediately restored. He said that this would serve the end to help change conditions on the ground in Syria. So we shall see exactly what change he is referring to.
Let's now talk to Ken Stone from the Hamilton Coalition to Stop the War. Ken, thanks for being with us here on RT International. So,
my pleasure.
What could be the reason behind the U.S. administration reviewing aid to the White Helmets? I mean, are they failing to praise Trump's efforts, or, I mean, are they falling prey to Trump's effort to cut funding to a number of U.S. aid programs around the world? I mean, what is at play here?
The White Helmets have lost their luster. They've been widely discredited in the eyes of the whole world as a fraud, as a propaganda arm of the Western military intervention, illegal military intervention in Syria. And I have to give the credit to RT and to independent journalists such as Vanessa Beeley and Eva Bartlett, who've been interviewed on RT, for showing that the White Helmets are a asset of Al-Qaeda in Syria, and that is to say al-Nusra. So my guess is that the Trump administration has estimated that the return on the dollar, and it's a lot of dollars, 32 million, that they're spending on the White Helmets is declining. And so that is the reason for the review of the continuing funding. But on the other hand, one has to be realistic, and you can't depend on anything that is said by the U.S. government. For example, on one day, Trump said that he was going to remove the U.S. presence in Syria. The next day, the Pentagon said exactly the opposite. A couple of days later, Trump said he would keep the U.S. presence in Syria, provided that the Saudi government paid $4 billion. And then a few days later, the White Helmets staged their very clumsy and amateurish false flag operation, this alleged chemical incident in Douma. And then then President Trump, along with Mr. Macron and Mrs. May, launched over 100 missiles on Syria. So one can't depend on what they say. It's an open question, in my opinion, whether or not the U.S. will continue funding at this point for the White Helmets.
Now, Ed Royce is the chair of the House Foreign Affairs Committee. Will his view carry any weight with the White House, given his position there? I mean, how large is the support for the group in the U.S. Congress in general?
Mr. Royce will carry weight with the White House. He is a Republican, and he has the support, unfortunately, of almost the entire Congress. There are only one or two dissenting voices in the U.S. Congress against the illegal U.S. regime change operation in Syria, notably the courageous Congresswoman from Hawaii, Tulsi Gabbard. But the rest of the Congress is behind the illegal war. And I have to say that this is a good time for U.S. taxpayers to pick up the phone and call their congressperson or their senator and say, I don't want my tax dollars to be used to meddle in the internal affairs of a sovereign country. So, yes, unfortunately, he will have some say. Moreover, on April 19th, I believe, Heather Nauert, the spokesperson for the State Department, said categorically that the government of the U.S. would continue paying the paychecks to the White Helmets personnel. So I think that that's a good indication that Mr. Royce has support. Furthermore, Senator McCain and his institute awarded the White Helmets a prestigious award a few weeks ago. I think that overwhelmingly in Congress, the mood is hawkish, even though the people of the United States have been shown not to be hawkish, not to want these wars.
Well, let's switch gears now to Canada. The White Helmets paid a visit to the Canadian Parliament just a few weeks ago. Do you expect Canada to continue supporting the group?
Regrettably, I have to say that I believe the Canadian Parliament will. They came to Parliament at the end of March to the subcommittee, the Parliamentary Subcommittee on Human Rights, and asked for continuing funding in order to, quote, save lives. We know that that's ridiculous. They don't save lives. They prolong the war and call for further military intervention by the Western powers. It was so bad that the foreign affairs critic for the New Democratic Party, Hélène Laverdière, had her picture taken with the White Helmets delegation and issued a tweet which called upon the Canadian foreign minister to intervene with the U.S. government and plead for the funding, that the U.S. continue funding the White Helmets. So in other words, to the shame of the New Democratic Party, their foreign affairs critic is acting as a shill for Washington to continue funding. And I'm appalled. The people in the peace movement in Canada are absolutely appalled, and we're up in arms over this. And I'm hoping that Canadian taxpayers are taking notice and are going to let the government know that we don't want our tax dollars to be used for a war, an illegal war in Syria.
All right, Ken Stone from the Hamilton Coalition to Stop the War. Thanks for being with us here on RT International.